40 Acres and Maybe a Mule, Chapter 8. The next morning, Pascal felt the ground shaking as Gideon came leaping downhill in bounding jumps, crashing against pine branches. Nearly to the cave, he took off his blue army cap and threw it in the air with a loud whoop. "I found it! I found it!" he called, bending at the waist to catch his breath. Gideon pointed behind him. "In the town over yonder, there's an office. Read Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands." Then it read, "General Oliver O. Howard, Commissioner." He waved his arms and shouted, "The Freedmen's Bureau, where they be giving out 40 acres and maybe a mule." Raising his eyebrows, Mr. Freedman nodded to Gladness. Softly he said, "There be a heap of angry white men against the coloreds. Ain't gonna be easy for you. You really studying to ask them for 40 acres? Closing his eyes, Pascal knew what Mr. Freedman meant. Only someone as bold as Gideon would think he would get 40 acres for a family farm. Being landowners after being slaves, that was almost unbelievable. Maybe being bold like Gideon and Mama was a good thing. But then, Pascal thought, he had saved Gideon twice, and Mama was dead. It was good to be careful, too. "Sure as God's in heaven, I'll have me 40 acres. Gideon threw his cap on the ground. Mr. Freedman pointed to himself, then to the cave where his bag lay. "Not only can I farm, but I got hammer, nails, and saw. I be a better than middling carpenter builder. You be needin' a house and barn, I reckon. Could you use me?" Next, Mr. Freedman pointed to Gladness. Pascal saw his brother's surprise. Gideon hadn't noticed Gladness before. "And my granddaughter Gladness here. She's a healer from the wise old people. She know herbs for making poultices. Could she help?" Pascal thought her dimpled smile as she said hello reflected the meaning of her wonderful name. Sure, whispered Gideon in a hoarse voice. 40 acres is a lot of land. I never thought as to how I could farm it alone. Thank you." Pascal watched his brother glance at Gladness again. She was tall for a girl, about Gideon's age, and pretty as a red bird in a pine tree. His brother seemed dazed by her beauty. Gideon wiped his face with his sleeve and seemed to recover. Chopping the air with his hands, he said, "Now this way it be. There be 4 families asking there already, a family of white folks with a wagon and 3 colored families with children along. I need all of you to come for my family." Pascal grinned. It was true. They were a big family now. Gideon straightened up. "Ain't nobody saying I ain't old enough, 'cause I'm tall enough." No one challenged him. "I'm a man with a family, and tomorrow morning me and my family gotta be first ones there. We can't miss getting them 40 acres. Pascal felt that Mr. Freedman admired Gideon's spunk in asking for a farm. Pascal was proud of Gideon, and Mama would have been too. If it was possible, his brother would get them close those 40 acres. Gideon said, "I don't want Master's last name, so I'll have to find a new one." He slapped his hat on the head. Nellie stared at Gideon and began twisting her braids. "Come on, Gideon," Pascal said. "Eat something." He touched Nellie's shoulder as she walked past to sit beside Gladness. "When you decide on a name, I'll take it too." The 2 brothers sat in the cave entrance. Pine fragrance spiced the air. The sun slipped behind clouds for a moment. Pascal handed his brother a chunk of bread and a tin cup of water. He was sorry Gideon had missed the fish boil. "Pascal," Gideon said, "we gonna own a farm, and I'm gonna be my own boss. I feel like I've crossed over to the land of milk and honey." He slapped his thigh and laughed. "Now all I need be a last name." Pascal pointed. "Woods be a strong last name. River, too," Gideon said, pointing to the distant savannah. "Gideon River, Pascal River. River reminds me," he said. "There be farms to be had in Georgia's Sea Islands, too. Ain't many going that far for land, but I hear it's open for folks." River? Gideon asked Pascal. Didn't we have an older brother name of River? River Jordan, said Gideon. Ain't thought about him in years. I heard that Mama carried on something terrible when Master sold him. I was just a baby. How come you remember? Mama talked about him. He was her firstborn. He looked like our papa, I heard. I don't remember Papa, Pascal groaned. The Masters has already broken up the family. All afternoon they studied names, strong, different names. City, Pascal said. Mama had the name of Jerusalem City. That'd be her first name. City? Gideon City? Pascal City? Gideon shook his head. Never heard of nobody named City. Shrugging, Pascal said, So? Gideon stared into the trees. Yes. Gideon jumped up and pulled Pascal to his feet. We'd be Jerusalem City's boys on our way to 40 acres. Gideon City, Pascal City. They laughed and hugged each other. That evening, they walked into town. The 5 of them sat in front of the storefront freedman's bureau all night. Gideon wouldn't let anyone beat them to that land. In early morning, while it was still dark, Pascal heard a wagon that creaked in a familiar way. He stood and waved as the wagon pulled up. Mr. Bibb hitched his horses to a hitching post and said, Come up. And sit a mite, Pascal. Everybody's asleep but me. Did you hear that President Lincoln died? No, sir. We heard he was shot. Fear and sadness choked Pascal. The worst had happened. Now what? It's a sad, hard, heavy time. Are you here for help? Yes, sir. My brother Gideon. Pascal stopped. My brother Gideon City is asking for 40 acres and maybe a mule. He watched Gideon wake up and look around for him, so he waved from the wagon. He didn't want Gideon to worry. We heard about land on the sea islands in the ocean, but that's farther on, said Mr. Bibb. If the land around here looks good, we may settle here. It's planting time already. Pascal listened to him until baby Daniel woke Mrs. Bibb. Then Pascal climbed down. Gideon, Mr. Freedman, Gladness, and Nellie were awake now. When Pascal told them that President Lincoln had died, no one spoke for a long time. During their silence, the sun rose over city stores in an April haze like a veil. He felt excited. This was the day that they'd get that family farm, or not. Today, that veil would be pulled aside. Pointing to the wagon, Gideon asked, Who they be? The Bibbs, said Pascal. They be the people what talked to the night riders. Gideon made a fist. I shouldn't have ran. I should have told them night riders how I was free, like I told that other white man. They just be out trying to scare folks. There'll be land out there with my name burned on it like a brand on a cow, and ain't nobody keeping me from it. Nellie began twisting her braids. Gideon, Pascal said softly, sometimes we gotta talk nice to white folks and just accept things to stay alive. Pascal hoped his brother would be respectful to the man at the Freedman Bureau. He hoped nothing would go wrong getting that family farm.